Try that again. It's off. I think this speaker is off. Hope so. Good afternoon, everyone. Welcome to today's Licensing Committee meeting. I'm Councillor James Cole, the chairman of this committee. Supported today by the vice chairman of the committee, Councillor Phil Barnett. The other members of the committee who are supposed to be here are Councillors Adrian Abbs, Steve Arter-Walter, Jeff Beck, Graham Bridgman, Billy Drummond, Clive Hooker, Tony Linden, Graham Pask and Martha Vickers. We are still short of 3 of them, and we'll see what happens, whether they yet turn up. Portfolio holder with responsibility for licensing, Councillor Tom Marino, should be in attendance via Zoom. Mrs. Julia O'Brien, Mrs. Amanda Ward, and Mrs. Maura Fraser, the officers who will be advising this meeting. Mr. Ben Ryan is in attendance as the clerk to the committee, and the Zoom host is Miss Lizzie Reeves. The meeting is being recorded and live streamed on YouTube, so members of the public are able to follow proceedings. Please can I ask everyone present in the meeting area to make sure you switch on microphones when invited to speak, as I did not, to speak directly into them and switch them off when finished. Can I also ask you to make sure your mobile phones are on silent or off?
Hello, James. It's Adrian. I was here. I was not a panelist for some reason. So, yes, assuming you can hear me, I am here, in fact, although by Zoom. Yeah.
We can hear you.
Sorry about that.
You know you are unable to vote. And Clive Hooker.
Good evening, Chairman. I'm here as well. Unfortunately, I've been delayed this afternoon and appearing on Zoom, and I appreciate I won't be able to vote.
Thank you for appearing nevertheless. If we do hear the evacuation alarm this afternoon, for those of us that are in the chamber, we must leave the building immediately. Please proceed via the safe emergency exit route, which will be shown to us by the trained officers. Please follow any instructions given by the trained officers. Assembly point is the Newbury Station multi-storey car park. Anyone requiring help will be assisted accordingly by the trained officers. Do we have any questions about the way in which this meeting will be conducted? No. We do have apologies from Councillor David Marsh. And we have no other known apologies. Okay. Minutes. Do I have any objections to the minutes, or can I sign them?
So proposed, Chairman.
Seconded. Thank you. Thank you. In which case, someone might need to loan me a pen. Thank you very much. There were a couple of comments to make, by the way, but they're only to do with the English language criteria rather than criterion. We've removed the word a to make it make sense. And there was a charge instead of chargers. From those, a report went to the September executive recommending a remittance scheme for electric and hybrid taxis. The executive agreed the recommendations made by this committee. These are reflected in the fees paper, which will be discussed at this meeting. Annual discussion on helping the taxi trade go greener was included in the forward plan, and an update on the tariffs is also provided as part of the paperwork for this meeting. Item 3, declarations of interest. Does anybody have anything they wish to declare? No, very good. Item 4. Moira, if you would like to introduce.
Good evening, members. As you'll be aware, the Joint Public Protection Committee reviews the Public Protection Partnership's budget, including the fees and charges, every autumn. They then make a recommendation to each of the partner authorities, so that's West Berkshire Council as well as Bracknell Forest Council, on both the budgets and the fees be adopted. This was discussed at the 5th of October meeting. All fees are set on a full cost recovery basis following a decision that was made at the JPPC in December 2017. This has meant that for the first time in 3 years, a proposal has been made to increase the hourly rate from £59 to £64, which equates to a below inflation increase of just under 8.5%. As all fees are calculated using the time taken multiplied by this hourly rate, most of the discretionary fees have had an increase by a similar percentage. Members will recall that we factored in the expected time savings arising from the introduction of the new iCloud-based system last year, where 61% of the 72 fees were in fact lowered. The statutory fees are marked with pale gold, and the Class B discretionary fees are headed with blue text in Appendix A. We have standardised the fees across both partner authorities and have retained the additional options around street trading consents that were agreed last year. At the JPPC meeting in October, members did, however, ask that some fees be revisited. Officers went away and did some work, and I can confirm that, subject to your agreement this evening, the change of address fee for taxi licences will be set at £11.50 and not £16 as was proposed at the JPPC meeting. In addition, the knowledge test fee is only payable if you have to reset the test. The initial fee is included in the initial fee paid by the drivers. Proposals around the fees for this test and testing methods will be included in the annual report to the committee in July next year, ahead of the next budget setting. Proposals are likely to include a change in respect of the removal of geographical testing and revisions to the way in which the tests are conducted, which will result in a lower fee. DBS fees will comprise the £38 charged by the government to do the fees, and then a half-hour administration fee of £70, which will see a reduction in this fee from £79 this year. The Licensing Committee are also asked to consider the proposals around the statutory consultation on the private hire operators and the Hackney carriage and private hire vehicle fees. Officers are proposing that a 28-day statutory consultation run from the 17th of November to the 15th of December. Members are asked to recommend the remaining fees to the executive, subject to the inclusion of any modifications agreed here tonight. The other change that you will see is that already been mentioned by the chairman, which is around a remittance for electric and hybrid vehicles in the 2023-24 fee scheme. Happy to take any questions, Chairman.
So, members, we will be voting on this one. Those of us that are in the chamber. Any comments or questions, please? Excellent. Councillor Bridgman.
Thank you, Chairman. You'll recall, no doubt, that in the meeting we had with the trade where we discussed these fees, one of the things I said was I was not particularly happy with having an arbitrary fee. I'm talking about the change of address fee now, which has been reduced from what it was proposed to be, £16, representing 50, because the logic is that we have an hourly rate of £64 and a £16 fee represents 15 minutes of officers' time. I was unhappy with having an arbitrary amendment to £11.50. What I was saying was, why is it not £16? The answer was because it doesn't take 15 minutes. So the question is, how long does it take and what should the fee be based on? £64 an hour. I do think we need to base all our fees on the hourly rate if they are not statutory assessed. If we are basing our fees on an hourly charge, we should be basing them on an hourly charge rather than plucking numbers which suit a particular argument out there. The problem, of course, is that £11.50 doesn't really relate to any time when you're working on a £64 an hour. You know, I worked out that, for example, it's dropped off my thing, an 11-minute charge comes out at it's the closest at about £11.70. It's not, you know, that isn't rocket science. I think we should basically say, is it 10 minutes? Is it 12 minutes? Whatever it is, charge that. Thank you, Chairman.
I note your comment, and I'll give you my own view on that, but I will also ask for officers' view. We didn't appear to be able to justify that it was going to be 15 minutes. And we are about to see the installation of the new processing system. That should make a major difference to things like this. And it didn't appear to be justifiable to bump that particular increase up so much at this point. So I was one who suggested that it should not go up so much. Is that a fair comment?
It is a fair comment, Chairman. One of the issues, Councillor Bridgman, is that we have is that it depends on the quality of the submission in the first place. So some applications take longer than others. So it is an average charge. We looked at the change of address on some of the statutory fees, which is set at £10.50, and we applied the 8.5% uplift to that, and that's how we arrived at £11.50. But we're happy to be guided by the committee on what they feel the charge should be, because the original proposal from officers was around £16 for 15 minutes.
Who's next? Councillor Linden was next up.
Thanks, Chairman. Yes, just to let you know, Overview Scrutiny Management Committee, I'm chairing a task group on fees and charges. So that'll be reporting in March, but we are calling witnesses and both officers and members of the executive on that. And we're proceeding with that. We haven't actually got to these licensing fees and charges. Yeah, I'm very pleased that we're working with Bracknell Forest, and we'll wait to see if Woking Borough Council join us. Well, that will further complicate what we're doing. But yes, I would concur with Councillor Bridgman's comments on that as well. So it is quite useful. So from the report, I've read it thoroughly, Chairman. Thank you.
I'll take Councillors Ardewalter and then Abbs on screen, and then Councillor Beck.
Thank you, Chairman. So with reference to paragraph 4.12, the knowledge test on licence renewal, I do think, and I must admit, I was either not present or do not recall the discussion on dropping that as part of the renewal. I think it would be a good idea to remove that requirement. Fairly obviously, once a driver has passed their initial test and demonstrated knowledge of the area, it's highly unlikely they're going to have forgotten it. And yes, new roads always happen. And this seems like one of those measures which will save cost for renewing drivers and be cost neutral and therefore efficient for us. So I'd certainly be strongly in favour of that. I can't think of any reasons why we would want to keep it. Obviously interested in other views, but again, I would give a firm support to that proposal. Thank you.
Councillor Abbs.
Yeah, thank you very much. Just coming back to Councillor Bridgman's point, no real issue with saying, oh, okay, it's 10 minutes of an officer's time, but to how the officer said exactly how much time that should be, it's always going to be a number. Problem I have with the number that we come up with, if you start using a percentage of officers' time, is the amount we're setting as the officer time per hour. Did you say £64? I believe, Councillor Bridgman? Yes. So that gives a salary of about £122,000 a year. Well, best one in the world. I'm pretty sure most of our officers aren't paid that. That's tending towards the more senior officers. I can see one of them laughing about it. So yeah, if we wish to set, the rate associated with the person actually doing the work, or the people actually doing the work, that might be more realistic. But I suspect it would be then even less than £11, because 15 minutes of a normal salary is not very much at all, really, I'm afraid. So it might be more left sub £10. But if we're going to go to one particular route, a route like that, which I wholeheartedly support, it needs to be associated with the grade of person doing the work. That was it.
If it's going to associate with the grade of person doing the work, that would certainly complicate matters.
Understood, but then it's a lot fairer. You think about a taxi person saying, well, I don't need 122,000, I am nowhere near that. So if we're going to connect with them and offer a fair service, we surely have to be closer to, how they work and live and earn. And I don't know, what is the average salary of an officer doing this work? Do we know?
Chairman, if I could answer that, it's not just purely related to salaries, Councillor Ebbs. There's a whole host of other costs that go into.
Well, of course. But
I mean, it's a significant list of amounts of money, not officers' salaries. Officers' salaries being one.
yes, but the officer's salary is also not just the base salary; it's also the NI contributions, pension contributions, a whole bunch of other things. So the 122 number I'm using is significantly higher than that anyway. If the £64 an hour is meant to represent. So I said I'm not opposed to, in principle, linking it to an amount of officer time, but I just think it needs to be an appropriate amount, and £64 an hour is a lot of money still for the type of, especially if the system becomes more automated as we go down the road rather.
We look at this every year, don't we? And I'm sure we will need to look at this in the light of the new system. The amount of time for any of these jobs.
So Chairman, if it does provide any reassurance to members, we do an annual review of the length of time taken to undertake any of the tasks associated with fees. And we're hoping the new system is going to be able to provide some of that information on an automated basis rather than us having to collect it and do some time and motion studies. So it is calculated each year, and that's where the fees are set at. Using
and
that
the £64 an hour.
The £64 is not set on. That's not related to time. That's factoring in the entire budget of the Public Protection Partnership, salaries being one element of it, but there's numerous other elements that go into that £64. This committee is not here to debate that £64. That's already been agreed by the Joint Public Protection Committee.
Certainly has. So that bit is not really up for grabs. Councillor Bridgman, do you want to come back on this same subject?
Well,
or shall I turn to Councillor Beck?
If I may, I put my hand up to respond to a point Councillor Linden made, but if I may, we'll pick this up as well, because I do have a
Councillor Beck,
response.
I know, wants to talk, but if you want to talk on the same subject, please do.
If you'll come back to me on the OSMC point, on the subject of hourly rates, clearly I probably know as much as anyone in the room about setting hourly rates, having been a solicitor. And our hourly rates, I can tell you, were considerably higher than £64 an hour, considerably. And that's because they don't. It's not just salaries, it's everything. And let's remind ourselves that the hourly rate this time last year was £59 an hour, which we all agreed. And we agreed, obviously it's not for, the point I'm going to make when I get to the OSMC point, is it's not for this committee to set these fees, it is for this committee to recommend to council to set these fees. But the basis on which we do it is twofold. Firstly, is it a statutory fee? Do we have any option at all? Are we simply passing on a fee that Her Majesty's government is telling us to charge for a certain thing? Or is it a cost recovery basis? If it's a cost recovery basis, then we start with an hourly fee. I mean, you can only have one hourly charge for the whole of the service. You can't start having different hourly charges for different people within the service because they're doing different things and then trying to work out. You've got to have a broad brush approach to this, which we set an hourly charge, we work out how long it takes to do something, which is my point about the change of address fees, and we charge a fee based on that. And that's the way to do it. Last year, it was £59 an hour with inflation and everything else, and that's £64 now. I have no issue at all with £64 an hour as the basis of charge based on salaries, on costs, offices, everything that you throw into running a service. So I have no issue at all with the way in which we're approaching this. I simply was addressing one particular fee within that schedule. But this is ultimately, this will be a matter for council, Chairman.
It will indeed. Councillor Beck.
Thank you, Chairman. If I may draw attention to item 4.4 on page 24, we're actually proposing an increase of 8.47%. This being the first increase for 3 years. It comes back to one of my hobby horses that we should really, when these fees are looked at on a yearly basis, we shouldn't be frightened of putting them up by a small percentage, because it does reduce, to exaggerate the situation, when it gets, if an increase for argument's sake was 1.5%, it's sort of accepted by people. But when you get to 8.47%, there's a bit of a shock and reaction from the people who have to pay it. It does also possibly indicate that over the last 3 years, we should have been charging more than we actually have. So we have been subsidising, shall we say, the various licensing activities carried out across the district. So I would, rather than leaving it 3 years or that sort of period of time, I think we should, as a committee, not be frightened to bung it up, put it crudely, every year if that is the necessity. Turning to 4.16 on page 25, where we're talking about charging £70 for a particular part of the service, which last year we quoted £79 for. I'm wondering whether we should actually reduce that, or whether, although we could reduce it, whether we should keep that as a little bit of a buffer, bearing in mind the uncertain times we're moving into, especially as far as costs. And I'll just throw that open to members for consideration. Thank you.
Would you like to comment, Moira?
Chairman, certainly, if members look at the legal implications section of the report on page 20, you'll see that we're not permitted to make a profit on our licence fees charging under the Local Government Act. So people could, if they look at that section, perhaps that will help you to understand better why we can do things at cost recovery. So,
in terms of cost recovery, yes, but why did we not put up fees 1 year and 2 years ago? Because the inflation simply wasn't there, I imagine. It wasn't justified, therefore, to put up fees in the past. Does that make sense to members? I see some heads nodding.
I remember the debate, Jim.
I'm sorry, Councillor?
I remember the debate.
Okay. Right, who's next? Shall we let Councillor Pask in next? I think we should.
Well, thank you, Chairman. I wasn't actually going to add greatly to the debate. Councillor Bridge just made the point that I was going to. We're not here to make a profit. We are here to recommend reasonable fees in line with inflation. We seem to get being a little bit hung up on some very small part, which is the change of address, which I'm sure doesn't happen that often. I'm quite ambivalent actually about the cost of that. I don't think it should rise very much. We're told that there's a new system coming in which has some sort of time and motions almost function to it. So I think, to put it bluntly, that part should, let's just leave it as it is. I go with you, Chairman, not Councillor Bridge, but I think it should be £11.50 for that. But that's a small detail. I think the principle is something I support. I think we should recommend to Council, we as you said, the £64 is out of our control, isn't it? and we got to make a cost recovery without it being a profit. So as I am fairly convinced, of course, in the Moira did it, that all the rest of the fees are based on that quite accurately, may I propose that we accept with the exception of the 16 going to 1150, the fees as proposed.
Thank you, Councillor. There are, in fact, 5 items that we are asked to agree to. Before I go any further on that, Councillor Bridgman, you still have your hand up, and then I know Councillor Abbs wants to talk.
Chairman, I've on the point that's just been made by Councillor Pascoe, I'm not going to die in a ditch on this one, and I'm very happy to second the proposal to adopt officers' recommendations laid out at 2.1 to 2.5. The point I was going to make was in relation to Overview and Scrutiny Management Commission, which of course that is a scrutiny of the executive. This is a council decision. These will be fees set by council. So I doubt whether the working party that's going to be looking at fees will be looking at these fees. But I always stand to be corrected, but I just make that comment.
That was just an information item, Councillor Bridgman. I mean, it won't affect these current year's fees anyway. It's to go on because it'll be reporting to SMC in March. I just sort of putting it as an information item.
I think Councillor Bridgman's probably correct. These fees should not go your way. Councillor Abbs.
Yeah, thank you very much, Chairman. Really not much to add insofar as depends on the industry you're in, Councillor Bridgman. My industry has a rate card that has many different levels, and it has no problem charging the appropriate rate for the appropriate person doing the appropriate job. I've no idea about solicitors. I'm not a solicitor. Just help if you've got a bit of software that supports that, of course. And it'll be interesting to see whether the new piece of software does in fact support all of that. And if that's the case, and it shows that we've got a significant downturn in the amount taken for doing each job, then maybe we'll be able to pass that saving on to the taxi trade rather than just always talking about rise, rise, rise. Maybe we'll be able to go the other way. Who knows? I just saw a pig go by. That's it. Thank you.
Anybody else? No? In which case, we have a proposal and a seconder for all 5 of these. Would you like me to read them out? Good. In which case, if you would be so kind as to vote, we can vote by raising our hands, I believe. And that's passed unanimously. Item 5.
Chairman, this is an information item this evening. The report provides the agreed update on the changes to the tariffs that were discussed at the July Licensing Committee meeting. Members will recall that the Licensing Committee agreed to recommend that the executive consult on an increase in the fares of around 8%. This was agreed at the July executive meeting. We ran a consultation for the required 14 days from the 14th to the 28th of July. During that time, we received 3 objections to the proposed modifications to the table of fares. One of these objections was received outside of the consultation period. We contacted the person that had made the objection, and they chose not to resubmit their objection, so it wasn't incorporated. And the other 2 objections related to the filing charges, and both respondents decided to withdraw their objections, but they asked that their comments be noted. We also received a vast number of general comments about the tariffs when we consulted on the West Berkshire Council consultation portal. And those are all responses all set out in appendix to the report. As the objections were withdrawn, there was no need to go back to the executive for a decision, and the revised tariffs came into effect on the 29th of July. We later received a request to clarify the presentation of the fees in respect of vehicles that carry 5 or more passengers. Members will recall that the 50% uplift was applied to the amount on the meter at the end of the journey. As you can imagine, for the taxi trade, that presented some significant problems, perhaps later on a Saturday evening. We sought advice from legal colleagues who confirmed that as this was a decision about presentation and not about fees, A delegated officer's decision could be to rejig the way the tariffs were presented, and we have done so. We've also written to the trade to let them know, and they've been published on the website. Members are asked to note that the 23-24 fares will be discussed with the trade at the January Taxi Trade Liaison Committee meeting. The outcome of that discussion will be reported back to the Licensing Committee in July. And if there is a request to modify the fees, which could be to go up or to go down, a report will be taken to the executive, most likely the September meeting. This year we brought it forward because of the urgency around fuel costs for the trade. And if any objections are received, the executive will ask to consider those objections at the November meeting. And once again, we will report back to this committee on any changes that are made.
Thank you, Maura. There were certainly varying views expressed in the consultation. Those that thought fees should go up and those that did not. From the driver's point of view, the biggest issues seem to be over the fouling charges. I do wonder whether we as a committee ought to be asking officers to look at that again next year. However, comments, questions, please. Councillor Linden.
Thanks, Chairman. Yes, I think on the balloting side, I think they do have a point, because obviously the smell of people fouling vehicles, it can be pretty bad doing that. I mean, obviously, thankfully it's never happened in my vehicle, but it is, but in terms of fuel charges, petrol charges have gone down. And also, but diesel has remained stubbornly high, and there is a variation throughout the district in terms of fuel costs. Particularly, it's lower in the eastern area than in West Berkshire. The remainder of West Berkshire, quite clearly, even in Newbury and Thatcham. And I certainly know that because I visit that for work. And certainly see it on the roads. But also in some cases when we're talking about electricity, and maybe Councillor Abbs might want to mention something on that, it does vary in terms of charge points and things in terms of costs, because obviously it's cheaper to do it at home and charge overnight. So those do vary, and I don't have an electric car or a hybrid, but I do read that in a variety of automotive magazines. So I just wanted to raise those points, Chairman. Thank you.
I'm not sure we have that many electric taxis yet. Sadly, I'm sure we will have before long. Councillor Abbs.
Sorry for that. Yeah, I think there's one or two. There's not many. I saw Go taxis, I think, with one. It's funny. I was similarly going to raise the since our last meeting. I've probably taken 10 different journeys by maybe a little bit more than that, taxi journeys. And I've been asking the taxi drivers, what do they think of what we've done? I'm sitting in the back going somewhere, I might as well talk to them, right? I would say out of 10 hadn't read the consultation, didn't know anything about it. So I'd just like to raise that I think we've still got a connection issue with the actual drivers themselves and awareness of what we're doing here. The one journey I did go with, which was reasonably long, and therefore had a reasonably long chat with the driver, wasn't concerned about fees or anything. I mean, of course, it is what it is. The thing that he remembers most is the fact that the draft wasn't really a draft, and the fact that it contained things about the dress code. So from my interaction, I know it's anecdotal, but from my interaction with all of those taxi drivers is that I know we're doing a lot of good and hard work here, but I don't think it's really being noticed very much, except by a few maybe taxi owners. And I'd love us to find a better way of engaging with more of them. But anyway, I just thought I'd at least share that with you, because I know you're going to make a decision, but it's not, the information isn't getting to the end point as far as I can tell.
That's a fair comment. If it's not going through, the policy side we'll come to later. Yes, there have been lots of comments on policy side, and we're not finished on the policy side yet either. Asking officers to somehow get over a consultation to more drivers. Possible?
Something's always possible, Chairman, and we can look at ways that we can engage perhaps better with the trade. We have the taxi liaison meetings. Those are open to all members of the trade to attend. They can attend in person because I know some of the trade have difficulties with the technology, and other members of the trade have difficulties because they can't get here, because a lot of the trade will be sitting at the ranks when they dial into the meeting, and they may take a call and then they have to go off. So we do try and make that as transparent as possible. The notes from those meetings are circulated to everybody that we have an email address for, so they can read those if they're able to, and if they're interested in reading them. But certainly we can look at other methods of engaging with the trade. You know, the problem is that not many of them sit down on the ranks. It's where do you access and how do you get hold of them? But we can look at that, Chairman.
Thank you. They all work. Getting here to a meeting is not simple.
Chairman, may I just quickly come back on that? It just struck me that because I do pick the taxis up in the rank most of the time, if not booking it, but dropping a paper copy in to the drivers is not that big a deal. I'm sorry, I've said it, but I hope it's not that big a deal. And that would at least alleviate that at the different places throughout West Berkshire. There's not that many ranks that we would have to go in.
Can we leave that with you to discuss? Thank you. Councillor Barnett.
Well, Chairman, it was really to reiterate your point regarding this issue of visiting the soil in the vehicles, and I think it's pointed out also by Councillor Linden. I mean, I do feel that, you know, that is something that does need to have a bit of careful consideration. And also, I wonder how the enforcement side can be implemented if it's a case of individual that's just been picked up and then dropped off, and very little information is passed on to the driver. So I think something we probably need to look at in future.
Okay. Councillor Bridgman.
Thank you, Chairman. Firstly, let me say that I'm very pleased it's not coming back to executive, that we have reached a decision and the tariffs in, and can I thank officers for the work that's gone into getting these tables of fares that are in pages 65 and 67 at the back, because I do think they are explanatory and neat and tidy. You know, we went through a whole load of grief getting to a point where we had standard amounts, you know, £5, £7.50, £10, whatever it might be, rather than those very esoteric amounts in tariffs 1, 2 and 3. Yes, the distances look a bit strange, but that's the price you pay for having neat and tidy amounts per unit of distance. But the units are nice and straightforward. I follow entirely the 5 or more passengers piece there. And well, we've introduced a soiling charge. I think there is then a conversation about experience and what that should be going forward, but at least we've introduced one, so that is now there and it wasn't there before. Chairman, I'm very happy to note, because of course we're not being asked to vote on this one, we're being asked to note what has happened. I'm very pleased to note that the decision has effectively been taken for us by the process we went through to get to this point. Thank you, Chairman.
It is progress. Yeah. If there are no more comments, we will note this report and move on. Agenda 6, consultation update. This is only an update. You're going to give us some comments?
Chairman Julia is going to introduce this item.
Thank you very much, Chairman and Moira. So, as Chairman just said, this is a report to update the committee on the outcome of the public consultation for the draft policy. There have been lots of comments that we've received, and we are in the progress of having meetings with the trade. So just to start the process off from the beginning, if you like. So members will recall that they had an agreement where the draft policy would go out for consultation, which it did, to a list of individuals, companies, it went on the website, the PPP website, went on the West Berkshire website, to the hub. There was a survey that was put out. Trade members were individually emailed. We've had officers out doing private hire operator inspections who've been flagging up the fact the draft policy is out. At any meetings that we've been to, for example, pub watch or general enforcement, walk about town, whatever, we've mentioned the fact there's a draft policy out. So we've been trying to spread the message as widely and fully as possible. And people could respond to the consultation either by going on to the survey on the website or by just emailing into us and making general comments or specific comments or any comments they wish to make. So the trade meetings that I'm very pleased to say members have engaged with as well as the trade and officers, so thank you for that, have been going very well, but it is obvious that there is a lot of concerns that the trade have. And so we have taken to going through the draft policy pretty much line by line and taking the comments on board and then doing whatever is needed with them, a lot of which is seeking further legal clarification to them. So as I say, there's in Annex A, there are the hub survey results and results that we have had emailed into us. What is not here at the minute is the outcome of the meetings with the trade, because that is still, we're not quite there yet. I think we're on Annex B, which Moira may remind me because she's been doing the sterling work of putting all this together for us. So, as I say, the aim is that we will continue those meetings, finish those meetings, and then we will, the idea is that following this, that we will seek legal clarification on any elements of it that need to be done, come up with a further draft policy, which will then be back to the committee for members to have consideration of, along with anything else that you would like us to see clarification on with the legal team. Hopefully that makes sense. Thank you.
Thank you, Julia. Yes, it's been quite an exercise, the meetings we've had. And we've had really good response from the trade. I don't mean they've been agreeing with us. They've come back in detail to disagree where they want to disagree. Councillor Bridgman.
I think I was going to say very much the same thing, Chairman. I think we've had some very robust discussions with the trade and a number. I think we've had 4 meetings. I don't know that I've been at all of them, but certainly there have been a number of meetings with the trade. The trade have engaged with this process, and I thank them for that, because I think we need to get this policy right for West Berkshire, and there is work to be done on it. Thanks to officers, obviously, for the amount of effort that's gone in behind the scenes. But I do say that we have had very good discussions with the trade, and we're working our way through this beast, and we'll get there in the end.
It's a fair statement. Councillor Adewalter.
Thank you, Chairman. And again, thank you to Julia and colleagues for again, as I've not been involved, what seemed to have been a lot of work. Just one request, I hope it doesn't add too much to the workload going forward, is that on page 77, you identify that of the 29 respondents, 4 were drivers or operators, 4 were some flavour of either councillors or local authority officers, and 19 were West Berkshire residents. I'd be interested to know, and I think certainly it would be good, maybe in summary for at least some of the charts of the summaries of what you told us, to split out those 3 groups of people, because it's entirely likely that a taxi trade driver or operator would see something rather differently to residents or officers. So if it's not too much grief, that would be a very good addition when the final version comes out. Thank you.
Moira?
I'll check to see if the software will allow us to do it, because that's come directly off SurveyMonkey. And I'm not familiar with how you can interrogate that information, but if we can, we will.
Okay. Any more for any more? If not, then we are asked to note this one. We're asked to note responses, and we are asked to note that it will come back to this committee in due course. Let's move on to item 7. Back to you, Maura.
Chairman, the final item is just an update on the meetings that we've been having with the trade. As has been previously identified, we've had several meetings, I think 3, maybe perhaps 4, on the taxi policy. In addition, we've also had the October scheduled meeting. We have 2 scheduled meetings a year with the trade. The January meeting, we look at the taxi tariffs going forward, and we look at any comments that come in on the consultation on the fees. The October meeting, we looked at the fees themselves, and I have to say that we didn't have much response from the trade at the liaison meeting about those fees. The other issue that was raised with the trade is just to notify them that as of the end of September, I think it is, Julia and Amanda, we're not continuing with our contract with the licensing liaison officers. They were grant funded through COVID funding, and that funding's now come to an end. And Julia is working with Sean at looking at a model about the way the team will be structured going forward. The good news is that we are going to use our apprentices. We're looking to eventually have 4 apprentices join our team, and they will be fully trained, and then they'll be able to undertake some of the lower level investigations. So the good news is one of our apprentices started last week. So hopefully she'll be able to come along to one of these meetings soon and meet all the members. And we've got another apprentice starting with us this coming Monday. And we've also in the process of recruiting a 3rd apprentice who will hopefully join us as soon as all that contractual stuff is put to bed.
Good. Councillor Linden.
Yeah, just to add the point from Moira, I mean, these apprentices are very useful, and certainly in the Royal Berkshire Fire and Rescue Service, they're a great addition, and they similarly will be very good for this council as well, and I strongly support it, and hopefully, depending on budget, we might get a few more throughout the council.
Anybody else? Any comments? If not, I have one minor one myself, which I might as well put forward. One thing that's not highlighted in the report is something that did come up at the end of the liaison group meeting, which is about the DBS checks, where Julia confirmed they can be done in Newbury as well. One of our trade reps pointed out they can be started online. I went to the PPP website, did a search, and neither a search on DBS check nor disclosure and barring service produced a result at the top of the list. You can get at it, but you have to go via, for example, West Berkshire dual and private hire driver license. Go into that, you'll find your way to it. I expected to see DBS check come at the top of the list when I asked for DBS check. I don't get it. So that's a little bit of tagging in the website, no more than that, I would imagine.
We can take that away, Chairman, and look at it.
Thank you. If there's no more, I will say that we will note this one as well. Next meeting is due to be on the 23rd of January.
Got the forward plan.
Yes, and I'm about to ask you if you have any amendments for the forward plan, Councillor Linden.
Thanks, Chairman. I just wanted to point that point, that's all.
Do we have any amendments for the forward plan? No? In which case...
Sorry, yeah, Chairman, you probably can't see. I'm sorry about that. Yeah, I would like to for us to spend a little bit of time talking. I just, as we've gone through the meeting and total evidence I was talking about, it really drives home to me how we're not quite connecting to the end points. And can we carve some time out to maybe figure out different ways of doing it? Is that within the remit of this? It's almost like the customer journey stuff, isn't it? That we from another angle, but I think we need to find ways of actually reaching the endpoints of the taxi trade, not just relying on the things that we've done of old. And that may mean the campaign going out there physically. I don't know. But anyway, any other business, whatever you want to call it, I'd be interested in figuring out how we do that.
Well, Maura is already asked to look into how we can do that. I'll take that as a further request.
Maura, can we have a chat about it?
Of course we can, but we do need to bear in mind that there are very limited resources within the licensing team in particular. So
and that
there are limitations on what can be achieved, but there's no harm in talking about what can be achieved.
And that's why I think it helps to give the officers support from the group to say, we really want to reach out, and then it becomes, how do we fund it and how do we go from there, doesn't it really? But I mean, if at the end of the day what we've got doesn't reach where we need to go, then we're kind of not quite delivering what we could do. But anyway, it's just a minor point.
As we can set up a Zoom, I'm quite happy to sit in on it as well. Right. I think we're done. Thank you all for attending, including those online. I'll close the meeting. You can tell us when we are no longer live.